I swear to you, this isn't one of those my cousin's neighbor said stories. This isn't some internet urban legend that grows wings every time someone retells it. No, this is my life. This is my land. And this is the day a woman with a pearl-encrusted clipboard tried to turn my great-grandfather's pasture into her daughter's fairy tale wedding venue, without permission, without shame, and without the slightest idea who she was messing with. It started on a Saturday morning like any other, the kind where the air still holds that little bit of cool before the heat settles in. The sun sliding slow over the hills like it's waking up, just as lazy as the cows, and I walked out to feed them like I have every morning since I could walk, coffee in one hand, worn leather gloves in the other, ready to hear nothing but the hum of cicadas and the low, satisfied grumble of dairy ladies waiting on breakfast. But instead, I heard violins. Violins. Not fiddle music, not country radio drifting from a pickup down the road, but string quartet violins, floating across my pasture like somebody summoned a PBS special in the wrong zip code. And there they were, glossy white tints rising like mushrooms after rain. Twinkly fairy lights strung from my oak like it was auditioning to be a wedding magazine cover. Tables dressed in linen so white it looked illegal to breathe near them. And a champagne tower glimmering like a monument to people who say estate instead of yard. And dead center of it all, barking orders like she was Moses parting the cattle, was Evelyn Caldwell, HOA president, suburban warlord, and self-appointed Empress of Maple Crest Estates. I stood there with my feed bucket halfway lifted thinking maybe I was hallucinating from lack of caffeine. Because the only thing wilder than seeing a full wedding pop up on your farm overnight is realizing someone was bold enough, delusional enough, to decide your land, your deeded, fenced, three-generation farm, was suddenly community property. So I cleared my throat, loud enough to spook a sparrow out of the oak, and I called out, "Morning. You folks get lost on your way to the country club?" And the wedding planner turns around, clipboard shaking in her hand like I'd just threatened to interrupt her oxygen supply, and she goes, "Sir, the hay bale staging goes over there," pointing like I work for her. That was the first moment I realized this was going to be something biblical. Before I can even tell her where to put that clipboard, Evelyn herself turns, wearing a visor the size of a satellite dish, latte in hand, fake soft smile plastered on like she practiced it in a mirror, and she says, "Oh, Daniel. Good. You're here. Isn't this just magical?" Magical. Right there. In my alfalfa. I blink, slow, like my brain needed a reboot, and I say, "What in the holy hay bales are you doing on my property?" And she does this little sniff, the kind only people who name their dogs after fashion designers do, and says, "Relax, it's community buffer land. We need a rustic space for the wedding, and besides, your cows smell terrible. This is a nicer use of the field." I swear I heard a cow gasp behind me. Community buffer land? I repeat, because sometimes you have to say stupidity back to people so they hear how insane it sounds. Evelyn just waves her hand like she's swatting off humility, sipping her latte like she's hydrating for battle, and says, "We voted. It's being used for community enrichment. And this event will elevate everyone's property value, including yours." I look around slowly. My barns, my fencing, my grandfather's tools hanging by the shed, my cows watching like they know drama's coming. And something inside me settles, not anger, not yet, just a slow tightening, like a rope being coiled. "Evelyn," I say, calm as sunrise, "this land has been in my family 82 years. My name is on every deed. There is no community buffer. There is no HOA jurisdiction. This is my pasture." And she just laughs. She laughs, like I told her I planned to serve boxed wine at a wedding instead of imported Prosecco, and she pats my arm, pats me, and says, "Daniel, don't be dramatic. It's one day. You don't even use this space." A worker drags a power line across my fence post like punctuation. That's when my voice drops, when everything in me goes still the way the sky does right before a storm hits, and I say, very clearly, very slowly, "Get off my land." And she smirks, lifts her sunglasses, looks me dead in the eye, and says the line I will remember until they put me in the ground. "You can't stop progress." I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't call the county on the spot. No, something far colder settled in my chest, something older than dirt and sharper than barbed wire, the kind of quiet fury only farmers understand, the kind passed down with calloused hands and stubborn hearts. Because here's the thing about growing up on land your family bled for. You learn patience, you learn boundaries, and you learn that people who think they own the world usually haven't earned an inch of it. So I walked back to my porch, set my coffee down, pulled out my phone, hit record, zoomed in on that whole circus. The archway, the flowers, the ridiculous ice sculpture shaped like a swan for some reason, and I whispered into the mic, not angry, just steady. This is trespassing. This is theft of use. And tomorrow, they're going to regret forgetting that soil remembers. Because if Evelyn wanted rustic authenticity so badly, she was about to get it. Not the Instagram barnwood aesthetic, but the real thing, the kind that comes out of a cow at sunrise and reminds you Mother Nature does not mess around. And as I stood there watching strangers trample the land I grew up on, listening to classical music float through a field meant for cattle, something clicked inside me like a tractor ignition on a cold morning, a decision forming slow and solid. They wanted a farm wedding without a farmer's permission? Fine. Tomorrow, they get farm life. The honest, unfiltered, knee-deep in nature version. And Lord have mercy, they were not ready for it. The funny thing about fury, real countryside fury, is it doesn't explode. It simmers, quiet like a pot on low heat, and the longer it sits, the stronger it gets, until you lift the lid, and suddenly the whole kitchen is steam and inevitability. And that night, as the last truck rolled out of my pasture, and the fairy lights glowed like smug little stars over land they did not own, that anger simmered so low and steady I swear even the crickets paused to listen. I didn't sleep much, not out of rage, but from calculation, because when you grow up on a farm, revenge isn't about breaking things, it's about balance, about restoring what someone took without asking, and doing it in a way that makes the lesson sink deep into the soil. And somewhere around midnight, I ended up sitting in the barn leaning against old timber beams, coffee gone cold, dog at my feet, staring at the manure spreader like it was Excalibur. And I swear it glimmered back at me. By the time dawn rolled in, rosy and gentle like it didn't realize war was about to break loose, the field was quiet again, dew sparkling on trampled grass, tents standing proud like monuments to arrogance, a flower arch planted right where my irrigation line ran underground, meaning they didn't just trespass, they risked breaking the very system that keeps my land alive. And that was the final straw. Before I fired up the tractor, though, before I even grabbed the keys, I did something far more dangerous to a person like Evelyn Caldwell. I checked the law. See, out here, we don't do stupid, we do right. And right means covering your bases like fresh hay over frost. So I called the county clerk, nice woman named Bree who's known me since I was knee-high to a fence post. And she confirmed, in that polite, slightly amused tone only county workers get, that not a single inch of my pasture was part of any HOA jurisdiction. Daniel, she said, if they step 1 foot past your fence, you could run sheep through a wedding buffet and still be on solid ground. Funny, I said. I was thinking heavier livestock. She just hummed, the legal equivalent of bless their hearts. They picked the wrong cowboy, and emailed me the parcel map anyway. Black and white lines printed over land I could walk blindfolded and still know every dip and ridge of. Then I called Sheriff Hartley, old-school lawman, stomach like a retired bull, handshake like a cinder block, and he sighed before I even explained, like he already knew whatever I was about to say involved deeply questionable suburban judgment. When I finished, he just said, "Don't break anything but their pride, son." Never crossed my mind, I replied, staring lovingly at the manure spreader like it was a chapel organ and I was about to play the most righteous hymn ever composed. Now, if you've never run a tractor at sunrise, let me paint the picture for you. The air's cool enough to bite your lungs a little, birds waking up like nature's alarm clock, diesel engine kicking over with that low, patient rumble that feels like power and purpose rolled into one, and as I eased that green and gold John Deere out of the barn, my cows lifted their heads like they knew something biblical was about to unfold. Daisy, my most productive and most dramatic dairy queen, gave a low, approving moo like she wanted front row seats. And then I saw headlights down the road. A caravan of shiny SUVs, the kind that have never seen gravel before in their life, creeping along like they were nervous to wake the countryside. Bridesmaids inside adjusting curls and lip gloss like nature itself was waiting to be impressed. They wanted rustic aesthetic? Buddy, They were about to get the aroma too. I hit the throttle just a little, not enough to be reckless, just enough to feel the engine stretch and settle, and I guided that tractor toward the field with the kind of calm you only see before a man does something historic or deeply unhinged. I eased right up to the edge of the setup. White chairs all lined in perfect rows like they were waiting to swear loyalty to the HOA queen, dance floor polished, champagne flutes sparkling like glittery little lies, and I whispered, "This is gonna sting." Then I pulled the lever, and if heaven ever wept tears of justice, they would look exactly like that first glorious burst of cow manure arcing into the morning sun, landing with a splat on a $30,000 wedding setup, like a judgment day delivered from the bowels of the bovine gods. It wasn't chaotic, it was art. Controlled, steady, sweeping passes, the spreader painting each table with the same gentle, even coat a baker uses on a fancy cake, except instead of buttercream, it was Daisy's finest work, fresh and warm and righteous. White chairs turned brown in seconds. Fine linen sagged under the weight of destiny. Pink roses wilted under the steam. If you listened close enough, you could almost hear the land sigh in satisfaction. And then, then came the screams. Not right away. First there was silence, like the universe holding its breath so it wouldn't laugh too soon. And then the first bridesmaid stepped into the field in her pale lilac dress, heels sinking into mud that was not mud, lifting the skirt like she was stepping into a swamp of regrets. And as the scent hit her, she made a noise I can only describe as a dying flute. The maid of honor gagged so hard, she bent at the waist like she was bowing to the gods of common sense. The groom stumbled back, shoes ruined, dignity dissolving like sugar in hot coffee. And then Evelyn appeared, coral dress, pearls, sunglasses trembling. And for a second, she looked like someone who had just discovered karma was real and had her address. "What have you done?" she shrieked, voice all high and tight like a tea kettle nobody took off the stove. I rested my elbows on the steering wheel, calm as a sunrise, and said, "Just tending my land, Evelyn. It needed fertilizing." "This is vandalism," she screeched. "No, ma'am," I said, pointing to the pasture with a lazy hand. "That there is agriculture." Her face contorted like she swallowed a lemon sideways. The bride sobbed into her bouquet. Someone stepped in a puddle and immediately regretted being alive. A groomsman whispered, "Dude," like he'd just watched the fall of Rome. And that's when Sheriff Hartley pulled up, chewing gum like the world's slowest judge, stepping out of his cruiser with the calm resignation of a man who knows paperwork is coming, but also knows justice smells sweeter than roses. He surveyed the field, took in the carnage, nodded approvingly, and said, "Mornin', Dan. Looks like the cows were generous last night." I tipped my cap. "Very." Evelyn spun toward him. "Arrest him. He destroyed our venue." Sheriff Hartley stared at her, eyes slow and tired like he'd seen every kind of stupid known to mankind, and said, "On his property?" She opened and closed her mouth like a confused trout. He held up a hand. "Ma'am, unless you've got paperwork saying this land ain't his, the only thing illegal here is you holding an event without permission." Silence, sweet, heavy, manure-scented silence, settled over the field. And right then, right in the middle of roses and regrets, Daisy let out the loudest, most triumphant moo of her life like nature itself was delivering the mic drop. I swear the violinist quit music in that moment. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just breathed in slow, deep, satisfied, the way a man does when his ancestors nod from somewhere beyond the tree lean like, "Good job, kid. You remembered who you are." Because sometimes justice doesn't need a judge or a fist or a fight. Sometimes justice just needs a tractor, a boundary line, and a woman named Evelyn who picked the wrong pasture to trespass on. And as the wedding party scrambled, ruining their shoes, their clothes, and probably their faith in humanity, I sat there in that tractor seat thinking one simple truth. You can steal someone's view. You can mimic their lifestyle. You can even pretend the countryside belongs to you. But you can't outrun a farmer's patience. And you sure as hell can't outrun his cows. Now, you'd think that right about there, after the first wave of panic, gagging, and scrambling through a field that now looked like a Renaissance painting titled "Arrogance Meets Agriculture," Evelyn and her pastel-colored entourage would cut their losses, gather their ruffled pride, and retreat to whatever sterile, HOA-approved cul-de-sac spawned them. But no, oh no, Because some people don't understand when the universe has already handed them their lesson gift-wrapped and steaming. Instead, they doubled down. The bride, bless her heart, mascara streaking like someone painted emotions down her cheeks with a Sharpie, wailed loud enough to startle birds 3 counties over. The groom stood frozen, like he was mentally reviewing every decision that led him to this moment, including saying yes to a woman whose mother weaponized homeowners associations. Meanwhile, Evelyn, dear, determined, delusional Evelyn, stomped toward me through the field, shoes sinking into justice with every angry step, wicker heel slowly disappearing like it was being swallowed by the consequences of her own choices. You, she sputtered, voice trembling, face blotchy the same shade as her overpriced blazer. You malicious petty. I held up a hand. Careful, I said, calm as the breeze rustling the grass behind me. You don't want to insult the man who controls the fertilizer supply. She let out a sound halfway between a scream and a tea kettle boiling over. This is vengeance, she spat. No, ma'am, I drawled, leaning against the fence like a man discussing weather patterns. This is land maintenance. This, she shrieked, arms flailing toward the stench-soaked ruins of her perfect little dreamscape, was my daughter's wedding. And this, I said gently, nodding at the field, is my property. Silence fell, heavy, slow, like the moment before a thunderclap. Even the wind seemed to stop to see what had happened next. Then, right on cue, Sheriff Hartley's radio crackled, a voice asking if the Manure situation has de-escalated in the kind of monotone only government employees achieve after decades of witnessing humanity's dumbest impulses. He clipped it off, turned to Evelyn with all the patience of a saint and the exhaustion of a man who's seen too much, and said, Mrs. Caldwell, unless you got permission in writing, which you don't, and unless you have jurisdiction here, which you don't, and unless you have a time machine to undo being caught on video announcing this land was community property, which you absolutely don't, then all you have is a mess you made yourself. She stared at him like reality betrayed her personally. Then she pointed at me with a shaking manicured finger. You think this is over? You think you can humiliate me and there won't be consequences? I shrugged. Well, you can file complaints, sure, but unless your HOA bylaws cover cowboy retaliation, I think you're out of luck. From somewhere behind the tent, someone gagged loudly again. From the limo, the bride sobbed. Mom, why couldn't we just rent a barn like normal people? That's when I saw something shift in Evelyn's eyes. Not understanding, not humility, no, but something much more familiar. The first flicker of someone realizing they pushed too far, that their power wasn't universal, that sometimes the world doesn't bend, sometimes it pushes back, and when it does, it smells like livestock. Still, she rallied. I will sue you, she hissed. I laughed, a long, slow laugh that tasted like morning coffee and long-earned satisfaction. Perfect, I said. Please do. I'd love to show the court those videos. Sheriff Hartley nodded, tipping his hat like he was awarding bonus points. And the county parcel map, I added. And the HOA permit signed by yourself, the sheriff said, deadpan. And witnesses, I said. And about 100 cell phone recordings from your guests, he finished. It was like watching a deflating balloon lose air in slow motion. Her shoulders sagged, her chin trembled, and her pride, once ironclad, HOA certified, and laminated, finally cracked. She turned, one heel broken, dress streaked with earth and humiliation, and dragged her way back to the limo, trailing a thin line of muck behind her like a slug made of entitlement. And as that stretch limo crawled down my gravel road, slow and sad like a wounded swan, her window rolled down just enough for her to shout, voice cracking under the weight of defeat. This isn't over, Daniel. I raised my coffee cup in salute. Fair warning, ma'am, I called back. Next time my field might be wetter. A groomsman audibly gagged. Someone in the distance retched into a purse. And then, like a curtain closing on the world's most satisfying theater performance, silence. By sunset, the field was empty again, chairs abandoned, tablecloths slumped, petals wilted under the weight of reality, and that arch, once decorated like a Pinterest dream, now drooped like it had witnessed a crime so powerful it aged 20 years in an afternoon. I climbed up on the fence, coffee in hand, dog panting by my boots, and watched the sky turn gold over the wrecked wedding set like nature painting a victory banner. And I'll tell you, there's a special kind of peace that comes after defending something that matters. Not loud victory, but the quiet, bone-deep satisfaction of knowing you didn't start the fight, but you sure as heck finished it. I took one last slow breath, let the evening settle around me, and whispered to the empty field. Property lines exist for a reason. Because they do. Lines matter. Not fences, boundaries. And if someone can't respect boundaries, well, sometimes the land teaches them. Sometimes cows do. And sometimes a farmer just has to help nature along with a John Deere and a little righteous fertilizer. So tell me, honestly, and without sugarcoating a thing, was I wrong to defend my land the way I did? What would you have done if a HOA queen tried to annex your backyard and turn it into her daughter's Pinterest fantasy? And if you've ever had a HOA nightmare of your own, drop it in the comments. Because trust me, you're among friends here. Let's debate it, let's laugh about it, and let's make one thing clear. Some battles don't need fists or lawyers. Sometimes all it takes is patience, principle, and a tractor at sunrise. Where are you watching from? And have you ever had to teach someone a boundary lesson the hard way?